Georgie Goes West by Robert Wright. And this is for Catherine. Now everybody knows that the pioneers went west in covered wagons drawn by horses, but when the Whitakers went west, they did better, because Mr. Whitaker built a sturdy little house on their automobile, and that made it cozy for them while they traveled. But for Georgie it was special, because the little house had a little attic, and that's what little ghosts could, what little ghosts could resist an attic that rolled on wheels. So Georgie and his little friends, Herman, the cat, and Miss Oliver, the owl, went rolling along, and it was almost like home. That is, until they got to the big country of the high mountains and the broad plains, and that country was beautiful. But Georgie could see it was much too big for a little ghost. Just the same, Miss Oliver looked for a little bird that chirped, but a big eagle swooped down on her and screamed. Herman thought he'd find a little kitty cat that mewed, but a big wildcat pounced on him and snarled. Georgie thought surely there would be a harmless cow that mooed, but hundreds of cows came after him like thunder, and they bellowed. Then Georgie knew the West wasn't only too big, but it was much too exciting for a little ghost, and he was thankful that at least the Whitakers were peaceable and of ordinary size. That is, until they bought their big, exciting Western outfits with high boots and tall hats. Georgie felt so little he decided he'd just have to mope in his attic for the rest of the trip. But when Mr. Whitaker drove into an Indian village, Georgie was so curious he just had to take a peek. It was a lucky thing he did, because that's when he saw the unhappy little Indian boy. His name was Keo, and Georgie thought he was unhappy because he was so little. But Herman, who had been around listening, said the trouble was horse thieves. They had come at dawn and stolen the best horses, and that was bad. But they had taken Keo's pinto, Little Lightning, and that was worse, because Keo and Little Lightning loved each other, and they would never be happy until they were together again. All day the big exciting people had been looking for those horse thieves. The Indians were looking, the cowboys were looking, the sheriff was looking, everybody was helping. Then Mr. Whitaker decided he'd help too. He got off to such a fast start, he almost left everyone else behind. He drove straight up the side of a mountain. He was so excited, it was a wonder he didn't fall off. Maybe he would have, if all his tires hadn't gone flat and his radiator hadn't blown its cap. Besides, night had come on, and you couldn't chase horse thieves in the dark. Everywhere else, they were giving up on the chase for the night. The sheriff rode back to the jail, the cowboys rode back to the chuck wagon, the Indians rode back to the village, and they all thought the same thing, that the horse thieves had gotten clean away. The horse thieves thought so, but they went to sleep smiling to themselves, because if the Indians and the cowboys and the sheriff couldn't find them in the day, who could find them at night? Well, Georgie thought, somebody could. He and his little friends, Herman and Miss Oliver, had a little talk about it. And here they're talking. First, Miss Oliver did a lot of flying around. With her night eyes, she could see everything as clear as day. That's how she spotted the horse thieves, and saw Little Lightning tied to a little tree. Now a little owl could find Little Lightning, but it took a clever little cat with his clever little paws and his sharp little teeth to untie him. And maybe a little ghost couldn't jump on a horse, but he could float up like a balloon. Now Georgie had never ridden a horse, he had never even ridden a harmless cow, but tonight Georgie rode Little Lightning down the mountain and across the plain. Georgie rode right up to Keogh's front door, and what a joyous meeting that was! But Georgie warned Keogh there was not time to lose if they wanted to catch the horse thieves. With one leap, Keogh was on Little Lightning with Georgie, and they woke up the Indians, and they woke up the sheriff, and they woke up the cowboys, and they all rode into the mountains and captured the horse thieves. And the cowboys hauled the Whitakers back to town. Now the sheriff took the horse thieves to jail, and the Indians took their horses back to the village. But Keogh took Georgie to his favorite tree and gave him a fine feather bonnet. Georgie was so proud he'd never felt so proud before. Then Herman felt so pleased he jumped higher than a wildcat, and he'd never jumped so high before. But Miss Oliver flew higher than an eagle, and she said, "Whoopee!" And she'd never said that before. Georgie Goes West by Robert Wright.